large spill, then the waste from that will be considered clinical waste. So then you need the clinical waste bin to be able to dispose of it. Cleaning of your shared clinical equipment, and there's lots and lots of things that are reused on consumers, and I've just put up a few examples there. So again, do you have a policy and a procedure on that? Have you received training on how to clean some of these items? And I know some of them might seem really basic. Does anyone do any wet drilling or moist drilling at all? So you've really got to think about it, because this is a reservoir of water. And so that reservoir has to be managed. And it's got to be cleaned and disinfected, preferably in a washer disinfector, at the end of each day, emptied and then refilled on the next day of use. Now sometimes there's control panels. They should be cleaned after each use, after each patient use, shouldn't they? Because you're going backwards and forwards. So training or tools or things like checklists that actually can keep you in check with regards to this. Do you have a cleaning schedule for these items? And have you established minimum cleaning frequencies? So some of these things you will clean after every use, or between patient use or client use. Others, like your transport bag, I quite like this bag. I was helping a podiatry service who does a lot of home care and trying to come up with a suitable bag that was going to keep our sterile and non-sterile consumables separate compartment for the sharps container, somewhere to put the spills kit, how were we going to manage the dirty and the clean instruments. It was quite a challenge actually finding a suitable bag that's met all of the work health and safety requirements as well in terms of manual handling, etc. But also surface that we could clean on a regular basis. Do you have your adequate cleaning equipment at or as close to point of care as possible? So many people use the disposable detergent or disinfectant impregnated wipes now. Does anyone use those for cleaning down? Remember that they're only TGA approved for small surface areas and pieces of equipment. You don't use them to clean the whole practice, because then you're cleaning out, using them outside of their scope that they're intended for. But you can have those at the point of care or the point of use, because they can be in tubs or on dispensers on walls, etc. And if you're mobile, you can put them into your bag and carry them with you. Surface barriers. Some people use surface barriers, but they don't then mean that you don't clean that surface after you've removed the barrier. So they have their place, especially on surfaces that are really difficult to clean. So we often use them on hand pieces and things like that. And of course, if you're cleaning, you need your personal protective equipment. There's lots, isn't there? So if I was coming into your practice to audit, these are the sorts of things that I would be looking for. Okay. I've just popped this up because I actually think it's sort of tells a bit of a story quite succinctly. And this is straight out of the Infection Prevention and Control guidelines for podiatrists, so the current version, which is 2012. So it just talks about how we manage the different categories of waste between patients and the instruments. So with our instruments, and certainly it will be in the revised 4815, because it's in the current 4187, is that any gross soiling that does occur in the instruments should actually be removed during the procedure and certainly at the end of the procedure, particularly if they're not going to be reprocessed immediately. Because if they've got debris on them and protein, that will set. And if you can't then go straight in and clean your instruments and that protein sets, the sterilisation process won't work. Especially if they get things like endotoxin on them, which is not destroyed in sterilisation. One of our big issues at the moment. And the treatment field, of course. So think about everything that you use within the treatment field. So it's the trolley, the cabinet, the nail drill handpiece and the cable needs to be cleaned after every patient. The chair, the debris tray, if you use debris trays. A lot of people just use disposable paper towel. I think is it New South Wales? It's mandatory that they must put a paper towel under everybody's feet. That's a requirement. Whereas we're a little bit more flexible, you can use whatever, as long as you put something there. And floor surfaces. Okay, tell you how many aged care facilities I go into, and I go into the treatment area where the podiatry is being carried out, and I think one time I dry reached because all the nail debris had been left from the whole session just on the carpet and floor. So not even a protective barrier had been put down. So it's not great aesthetics, because I was going in to run a flu vaccination clinic and I thought, I'm going to get out the bloody vacuum cleaner now before I start the job. So we just have to think about, there's the infection control list, but there's the aesthetics and the consumer aspect of it as well. Linen handling and laundry. Do you have any reusable linen? Some people have towels. No? I think if you can go to disposable, then it means you don't have to be trying to comply with AS 4146. But there may well be some items. And in particular I'm thinking about gowns and drapes, although I think most of us now use the disposable. But there may be some other items that you need to think about. So if you have reusable, then you need a policy and procedure in place, and that should include things like how you collect it, how you transport it, how you launder it, and how it's actually stored as well, both dirty and clean. And it does need to be laundered in accordance with 4146. The Australian Infection Control Guidelines say that if you do use a domestic type washing machine, then it must be a hot cycle with detergent, and the items need to go through the dryer in order to reduce the microbial count. They shouldn't be going home to be laundered in your machine at home. And of course you need segregation of clean and dirty, and that should be ideally physical, but it could well be a space barrier. And we need clean dry storage areas as well, because these sort of items actually attract pests and a lot of lint and dust, that sort of thing, which is what pests love, and so do bugs. Waste management. So again, a policy and procedure or a waste management plan. And it's all categories of waste. So it's your general waste, your recycled waste, your clinical and or your sharps waste. Confidential waste is included in that as well. And any chemical waste that you may produce. So we need to have segregation. So how do you segregate at the point of generation? So if we're thinking about our sharps, our disposable sharps, how do we segregate those at the point of care? Your sharps containers, again, must meet Australian standards. And they can be reusable or they can be disposable. If they're reusable, your contractor will provide those, and then they'll replace them on a regular basis. So they're colour-coded, as I said, they need to be secured, and they need to be at the right height as well. When you have full sharps containers, they need to be secured also in a designated area where there's a spill pit in the event that there is an incident. And if you have sharps or clinical waste, then you need to have a contractor, and that contractor actually has to be licensed. So it's the first thing that you find out is that your contractor is licensed, and you must have an agreement in place with them for collecting your clinical and your sharps waste. So I can see a number of the blade remover containers around, and often they're just sitting on a trolley. They must be secured, because it's too hazardous. Usually means you've got to be trying to secure it with one hand as you're actually putting it in and removing the blade. And as I said, those blades go immediately off to be reprocessed. Reprocessing of reusable instruments and equipment. I mean, we could spend a whole day talking about this. So really what I'm just trying to do is grab some highlights. What's the time? Sorry, I haven't got much on. Oh, perfect. So I've just dedicated a few slides to this because there's often quite a few questions, and hopefully we can answer those that aren't included in the slides. So you need policies and procedures or protocols, work instructions, SOPs, whatever you call them in your practice, for all steps of the reprocessing. Okay, really important. And you need to think about your reusable medical devices, but also if you do use single-use devices, that they are not reprocessed, but you still need a policy and a procedure around their use, because I do see single-use medical devices being reused. And unless you are licensed to reprocess those items, which you would never meet those specifications, you just don't do it. As I said earlier, you should be only using TGA approved reusable medical devices. So you really should have a list of those devices. Easy to do. I'm sure you have an assets register or an inventory register. So you can put down, you know, you've got 7 blade handles and what the ARTG number is. Really important that you know that, because you shouldn't use anything that doesn't have an ARTG because it's not been approved. And your equipment, so your reprocessing equipment is the same. So that also must be TGA approved and have an ARTG number. And really, any accessories that you use. So if you manually clean your instruments and you use a brush, you must use an instrument brush. And that must be TGA approved, not a little nail brush that you've gone down and bought from the supermarket.
Just a question, when you're cleaning up the floor in the clinic between clients, and there's toenail clippings all over the place, that's either going to be swept up, vacuumed up, however. Does that need to be TGA approved? Vacuum cleaner, dustpan, how then does that also get cleaned and emptied?
Your vacuum cleaner you will use will have to have a HEPA filter.
Yep.
Because you're a healthcare facility, so it has to have a minimum of 1, so that it can get up all the tiny microns of dust particles, and then of course you need to change that.
Yep,
So
that's fine.
don't sweep. We don't sweep in clinical areas because all that does.
We've got vacuum.
Yeah, and even that you can even use little dust busters because they will have a HEPA filter in them. It's just as long as you put that on a maintenance schedule
Yep,
that you've got to change your HEPA
perfect.
filters.
That's what we're doing. Just wanted
Great,
to- thank you.
excellent. And I think most of now the vacuum cleaners have got HEPA filters in them. You know, the ones that use at home have probably got at least 1. I think mine's got 3 in it for some reason. Just means you've got to change all 3. It's another job. Okay, where are we up to? Does anyone have their instruments processed off-site by another provider? That's become quite common because to meet the standard is actually quite difficult and quite expensive. The thing is, if you do have off-site sterilising, so that might be through another office-based practice, it might be a small hospital. There is, in the next 2 years, we will actually have a dedicated sterilising facility in Western Australia. So they're building them in Victoria and New South Wales, and we're just choosing the site now, I believe. We're going to have one here. Then you must have a contract in place. Really important. Alright? Because there is liability attached to this. And in that contract you have to include some performance indicators, and that practice or whoever is doing it must be able to demonstrate that they are complying with 4815 or 4187. Because the liability will stop you if there is a breach and you don't have a contract in place. And we're starting to see that occurring. That you do have access to the standards, so you should all have, whether it's a hard copy or an electronic copy. If you look at mine, it's got stains, it's because I go to it so often, it's like the Bible. But it is under review, and we're not quite sure what's going to go on into it. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more workable in this document. And as I said earlier, that you've got evidence of specific training and keeping up to date with that as well, because the technology is changing. You know, the old Banger sterilisers that we used to have, you know, have gone. Occasionally I see one, it's about 25 years old, well, it doesn't meet any standard anymore. So you can't rely on it for reprocessing. Okay. So do you have an adequate inventory of instruments? You know, and that will depend on your patient throughput. It will depend on if you're going out remotely to aged care facilities, because obviously you've got to have enough to keep going so that you're not reusing anything when it hasn't been reprocessed. Do you reprocess all of the items according to their intended use? So if it's a critical device, you're going to go through cleaning, packaging and sterilisation. If it's a semi-critical device, it has to do the same because your practices wouldn't have high level disinfection. Whereas if it's just a non-critical device, does it go through a cleaning or a cleaning and disinfection process, whether that's mechanical or manual cleaning and disinfection? Again, your reprocessing area, do you have a separate designated area? How many people have a separate designated area for reprocessing? Some of you are doing it within your treatment areas, the procedure rooms? No? Some people are?
Yes.
Yeah. So for you, the challenge is really there to be able to work your workflow to stop any sort of aerosol transmission occurring. And within that area, we clean, we inspect, we disinfect, and or package and sterilise, depending on the nature of the device. As I said, critical, non-critical, or semi-critical. You don't really use semi-critical devices in podiatry. There are non-critical or critical. But you've got that unidirectional workflow, and this is just an example of that. So this word, hang on, just want to see. No, oh, sorry, I was hoping I'd have my little red dot on hand. So you can see where the airflow is going from clean to dirty. So when we build new practices, we have to look at our air handling systems, because we actually don't want dirty air going to clean, do we? But then our flow, our workflow, our staff flow is from dirty to clean. And this is just showing you can see the dirty zone there where we're putting down our things, we're cleaning our items. We then move into like a transit zone, which is where we're inspecting and packaging our cleaned items. And then we have our clean zone, which is where we're doing our sterilisation and then dispatching our instruments to the storage areas. So we can see the instrument flow and we can see the people flow there as well. And the order in which the equipment is. Although I would probably do a slight redesign there. I would probably have a sink and then I'd have my ultrasonic and then I'd have my read sink. So how many of you have 2 sinks? 2? Wow. How many of you have washer disinfectors? Anyone gone down that route yet? For automated cleaning, which is... See, the thing about manual cleaning is it's not a validated process. So that's why now in day surgeries and hospitals, and I think probably office-based practice in a not too distant future, we will only mechanically clean unless the instrument manufacturer says this must be manually cleaned. So now we're trying to get all of the instrument manufacturers to make sure that we can mechanically or automatically clean our devices.
The ultrasonic still acceptable if we keep up our validation?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yep. You're also talking about airflow there. Where you've got enclosed space, do you have to have like an air extraction system? Or are we getting too technical?
We're getting too technical for office space.
Okay.
In the ideal world, yes.
Yes, I can just
But
imagine.
again, we've got to look at the risk. I think if we do all these other practical things, it's going to be helpful. But I would be, I sometimes go into areas where there's a fan, because it gets quite hot, doesn't it, where your steriliser is, and someone will have a fan going. And it's in the clean area, and all it's doing is blowing air around. You can't have fans in areas where you reprocess. Or the air conditioning vents have been altered, and the vents have actually been directed down so that when you're standing there doing your reprocessing, you're getting nice blowy air coming out. You can't do that either, because it disturbs the air particles and moves everything around.
That's time.
Time, is it? Okay. So just to finish off, because we've started a little bit late, make sure you've got a service agreement in place with all of your people who do your maintenance and do your validation, that you have a preventative maintenance schedule for all your equipment, and that you've got all your documentation related to every part of the process. So it's all your reports, your training records, your batch control, tracking for your critical items, cleaning schedules, any non-conformance. So if there's anything that goes wrong in any part of the process, you need to document that down. If a wet package comes out, you need to document that down because it's a non-conformance. And I've just put in a couple of slides for those of you who get a little bit confused about what sort of testing, performance testing you should be doing on your sterilisers, because it will depend on your steriliser and it will depend on what items you're reprocessing. So you need to know if you have an N, an S or a B class steriliser, and if you are reprocessing critical reusable medical devices and they are hollow, then the testing will be a little bit different. Alright, so it's really important firstly to know what your steriliser is, it is, and then what you're putting in there. And for those of you who might be doing local anaesthetics, using this little contraption here, you need to talk to your technician because it would be considered as a hollow item, which would change the testing that you would need to be doing, which would include a Bowie dip or a Helix type test. So always important to do that because they are hollow in parts. And I just put down the indicators as well, because people get a little bit confused as to what indicators you should be doing. And it is mandatory for you to have a class 1 external indicator on every package, or if you put unpackaged tray of items through your steriliser, then you must also put a class 1 on the tray. But all the other indicators, so namely 4, 5 and 6, are optional, providing you have a steriliser that has a printout and it has been calibrated and validated. If you have a lone steriliser while yours is being fixed, you must do an internal class 4, 5 or 6, okay, until your machine comes back and it's been all repaired and tested appropriately. Lots of people like to do a class 6 because it just tells you, it just validates everything that you've done. Okay, and I'll put a couple of slides on transport and storage of sterile stock, particularly important for those of you doing remote. And I'll put some examples of things that aren't very good. And this is what I see on a day-to-day basis. First slide, first picture you can see what's wrong. Dirty and clean mix. We've got sterile packaging that's not intact. We've got no labels on these critical devices in the second one. We've got perforation and staining. That is not how you store antiseptics. This one, these were sterile. The indicator had not changed colour, so they weren't sterile and they were about to be used. There'd been no colour change, so not checking the external chemical indicators before you open. So it hadn't been through a process. And this has got all water stains on it, so you would never use this. Okay? You have to run a process. Pardon?
That means it came out wet.
Yeah, exactly. So it has to be reprocessed fully again. So just some of the things we sometimes see. A little bit about aseptic technique, a whole topic on its own, and maybe that's a subject for the future. What if you do identify some gaps? You need to take action to address those gaps so that you're meeting your obligations. Continue to maintain your knowledge and update it because things do change. So regularly undertake some CPD courses in infection control. Thank you.